welcome back for our last video on concepts of kingdom agriculture. If you've watched all the previous videos, congratulations on making it this far. If you haven't seen them yet, go back and watch them and then come back and sit down for this conversation. We're covering our last two concepts in this video together because they both are kind of encompassed in this idea of God's intentionality. So grab a coffee, sit down, and let's talk kingdom agriculture. So the first thing that we should talk about when we're talking about God's intentionality in the scope of agriculture, and is our first concept, is the worldview perspective of creation being created and intentional, or it being an accident. A lot of the ways that we see agriculture stewarded in our world is kind of based on this idea that it is inherently flawed because it was created by accident, and so we need to step in and try to manhandle and to try to manipulate and to try to coerce it into doing what we want it to do. Whereas when we look at a creation or a designed-based worldview on everything that's around us, we have a level of confidence and belief and faith that God knows best. One of my favorite examples of this is with the difference between rainfall and snowfall. If I asked you if snow was just frozen rain, many people would say yes, right? That's something that we learn in grade school. It's just very understood. What if I told you it was different? I'm about to read an excerpt out of Carrots Love Tomatoes by, I hope I'm saying this right, Louise Riot. And she talks about the beauty of snow. Snow, which furnishes not only nitrogen but also phosphorus and other minerals, yields an extra bonus denied warm climate areas. Snow contains 40% less heavy water, or deuterium oxide, than normal water. Deuterium is a heavy isotope, a form of hydrogen, but a little different. Combined with water, it does not form H2O, the water molecule, but D2O instead. Heavy water, according to the Russian scientists who observed this, slows down some chemical and biological processes of growing plants. When the heavy water molecules are removed, plants seem to grow faster. Thus, crops are aided in short-season snowy climates such as that of Alaska. Even fog contributes to the soil's fertility, especially along the seacoast where it brings in large quantities of iodine, nitrogen, and chlorine. When I first read that, I thought that was so fascinating. To think that things are so intricately designed that God would give the grace to the places that aren't able to truly raise things year-round like we can in Texas. To give them grace to be able to at least raise stuff faster and more, it's mind-blowing to me. Absolutely mind-blowing. But so if we take something as simple as water that we may not even fully comprehend, how much more can we get wrong? So in a simple-minded way of things, we could look at water and say, okay, well, I could take some melted snow, or I could just pump water from the well, and it's the same thing. It's going to do the same thing for the garden. Water is water is water. But if I have a design-focused perspective on life, I might stop to consider that maybe God had a plan when he made snow. That maybe there is something inherently different about the way that it has been designed. And maybe there is a special, critical way that helps the environment around it. You know, I think that it's really important to highlight that even in the realm of science, we don't know everything. Scientists are constantly going back and changing their conclusions because of new evidence that's been discovered. theories are constantly debunked with things that we're continually learning. And if we're just being honest with ourselves, I highly doubt that we are going to know everything until we get to heaven with the Lord. I don't mean for this to be the focus of this concept, but I do think it's very applicable to highlight that chemical farming started in the 40s. And if we can just admit that we don't know everything and every ramification and every detail and everything that could have an impact on in an environment, then maybe we would be a little bit more apprehensive to use it. Maybe we would be a little bit more focused on the way that God has instilled fertility and weed control and pest control and all of these other things. If we would stop and look at the systems that God put in place, I think we would get a more wholesome effect. And it really pains me to think of what we may have lost in trying to turn to a accident view of his creation, in trying to manipulate it with these harsh chemicals and all of these high petroleum inputs that we just don't see in any of the patterns that God has already established. I do want to highlight and say that I don't think that we should allow this to paralyze anyone either. You know, it's thinking that we have to have this complete, vast understanding before we ever make a move. But it is very clear that there are consequences to following ideas that don't complete and line up with God's instruction and his glory and his methods. So we look at the story of Lot, and Lot is fleeing out of Sodom and Gomorrah. So when God is discussing with Lot on his plan for everything, he wants Lot to go to the hills. And Lot said, no, send me to, I don't remember the place, but he wanted to go to this other town. And so God said, okay, all right. And so Lot went to this town, and they were so despising of him and his family, they actually ended up fleeing to the hills where God originally wanted them to go. And then I think most of us are kind of familiar with what happened with Lot from there on out. You know, his daughters got him to become drunk and then laid with him, and you know, all of the dishonor and grossness that comes out of that. But my takeaway from that, and what I hope your takeaway from that is a healthy balance on our view between God's sovereignty and our free will. God wanted Lot to go to the hills because he knew it was best for him. And Lot was like, no, I want to go here. So God's like, okay. And so he let him go there and experience what it was like for him to then go to the hill where God originally wanted him. I wonder that if he would have gone just straight to the hills, I wonder if his daughters would have never attempted to lay with their father, because they would have had hope that there was other people in the town over to be able to continue on their lineage. And so when I think about this story, and I think about the possibilities, and I think about our interaction between God's sovereignty and our free will, it becomes abundantly clear that we are able and we are free to do a lot of things that fall short of God's complete intention for our lives, but that in the end he is sovereign, but that we do have consequences for desiring and chasing after these things that are and participating in these things that fall short of his good and perfect plan. And so just to kind of, I feel like people either like God is sovereign, everything is permissible, or God is totally riding everything on our backs to make it happen, and neither one of those is a healthy viewpoint of how things are actually set up in the kingdom. So So as we wrap up this concept, I want to make sure that we have a balanced view of these things, and that we do our best to follow God's perfect intention and his true will for our lives, but also understand that we have responsibility, and that does not give us freedom to do just anything and God will just take care of the slack, because that's not appropriate either. Our very last concept in this series is based on the same idea of God's intentionality, but this concept is that science can only answer how. God gets to answer the why. And I don't want to limit God in any capacity. He can absolutely also answer how. I know plenty of instances where he has provided the intricacies of how things have played out. But by and large, I mean, we look at, for example, like the Big Bang Theory. People try to explain away creation by, well, no, it was this instantaneous nothing to something, and there was this big boom, and then everything was created, and there was all of this light and all of the Big Bang. A lot of people use that to try to explain away the creation worldview. But I would, and I think a lot of other people would argue, okay, like, that answers how it happened, but my God answers why. I know that the Big Bang happened because God said, let there be light. And when I think of an infinite being speaking light and all of these things into existence, it probably was this miraculous, I mean, I can only imagine what that would have been like. And I do find it very interesting that it is in our human nature to ask why. And a lot of times I think we confuse when people ask why, we think they mean how, but they're two very different questions. You think of the child that says, but why does the grass grow? Okay, but why does it need sunshine? But why is the sun there? We're all trying to get back to God, and you can see it. You can see it from small little children, and that is their main question. But why, but why, but why, but why, but why? And all of our how answers are just never enough for them. They want to get to God. That's our heart's yearning. And so I would want to beckon everyone in conclusion of all of these concepts that as you're going out and learning things and gaining knowledge and looking at different tactics and skills and approaches, I urge you to be highly discriminate of the information that you're given. Because you might get a lot of how information out there, but the one who answers why lives in heaven. His name is Jesus. Before we sign off, I just want to take this moment to bless you, and I pray that the Lord be with you, and that he bless what your hands are put to, and that you would see him greater than you ever have in your entire life through diving into this world of agriculture, because I believe that he truly does want to meet you here through this. I pray that he would renew your spirit, renew your health, and the same for all of your family and friends. And I pray that he would use this as an example to teach everyone around you his goodness, his glory, and his love. I pray that one day that maybe we will get to sit and actually enjoy a cup of coffee together and talk about the goodness of God through agriculture. Until that day, be blessed. Class dismissed.